Hello, everyone. I'm Robin Wayne Bailey, and I'm very happy to be with you on this occasion of Philip Jose Farmer's 100th birthday. And I'd particularly like to thank Frank Schildiner and Michael Croteau for inviting me to take part in this celebration. Primarily, I'm going to talk a little bit about my experiences working with Phil on the Philip Jose Farmer's The Dungeon novel series. That was an exciting project for me to be involved with, and I had other experiences with Bill at conventions and such, and I'll talk a little bit about those toward the very end of this, but I'm keeping this brief as requested. And so I want to talk a little bit about The Dungeon. I was in the early stages of my career when I got a call from my agent to inviting me to take part in the Dungeon series. And I'd been a fan for a very long time, and I'd known Phil's work since the earliest days of my science fiction reading. To Your Scattered Bodies Go was one of my favorite novels. I enjoyed all of the Riverworld books, but particularly what caught my eye and made him a writer of interest to me and someone to watch were works like The Lovers and some of the more controversial short fiction and controversial novels that he wrote that were sort of regarded with one eye at the time. But these were daring works and really stood out in my mind to me and made Phil somebody that I wanted to read more of, somebody that I wanted to eventually meet. And eventually I got that opportunity. I came into science fiction at a fairly unique time. I sold my first book in 1982, my first short story in mid-70s. At that time, it was possible for an eager young writer or an eager young fan to meet many of the great names of science fiction, the people who stand out as giants today. People like Isaac Asimov, Robert Heinlein, Arthur C. Clarke, Gordon Dixon, Paul Anderson, and Philip Jose Farmer. I was honored and lucky to meet all of these gentlemen. But Farmer was special because for the first time, one of these writers had taken note of me and invited me to be part of a project that he was putting together. That project, of course, was The Dungeon. It was a 6-novel shared world series. Prior to this invite, I had written for a number of volumes of the Thieves' World series created by Robert Lynn Asprin and Lynn Abbey. And I enjoyed the experiences with Thieves' World very much. All the entangled plot lines and the entanglements of the various characters. And when the idea of a novel, of doing this at novel length came up, I was excited as heck. It was a tremendous idea to try to take a shared world project and expand it over the course of 6 novels. I also knew there were going to be a lot of problems, all the problems of a shared world short story series magnified to novel length. Still, I think the Dungeon series came out as well as could be expected for a first-time experiment like that. I was very proud of my novel, which is The Lake of Fire, number 4 in the series. When we were invited to take part, we were sent a synopsis of each novel, basically a short description of what should happen and who the characters would be. I chose to write the 4th novel because I thought that would be a place where a story would naturally reach a turning point and with which I could do a few interesting switch-ups and make a few interesting changes to the plot line. After my novel was done, as it turned out, the 5th book was done before my 4th book was done, which would bring us normally in a longer discussion to the nature of those problems of a shared world taken to novel length. But after my book was done, I got a call from Phil, and he was extremely complimentary, and that was sort of the beginning of a long-distance friendship. I've always had a thing of meeting some of the older writers and sitting at their knees, and I've never gotten over that today. I enjoy meeting them, hearing their experiences, hearing their stories of the business when they were young, and hearing their advice, basically. And that's always been important to me. It continues to be important to me. Anyway, we exchanged a number of phone calls, we exchanged a number of letters, and he became sort of a long-distance friend, as I just said. I had the opportunity to meet him for the first time in person a few years later at a convention, I think, in St. Louis. And that was a magnificent convention. There were 4 guests of honor, and those were Ray Bradbury, Ray Harryhausen, Philip Jose Farmer, and Wilson Tucker. All great gentlemen, all with very distinguished careers, and all very accessible to the fans and the other writers around them, willing to sit and share advice and tell stories and have a bourbon or a beer or two. And those were great times. It really cemented my admiration for particularly Phil, because he was so generous and so giving of his time and had such a great sense of humor. And I think I'm running up pretty close to the length of time they asked me to talk about. So I'm going to wish all of you a great weekend experience there. Hope that you continue to promote and read Phil's work and keep him in the public eye. His work really deserves it. And again, thanks Steve and Mike for inviting me to take part. And Phil, happy 100th birthday wherever you are on that great river in the sky. Bye, everybody.